1981. I was a 6-year-old kid sitting in a field in England and suddenly Concorde blasts over my head at a few thousand feet. It's followed by an RAF Vulcan bomber and then the Red Arrows do their thing. It's the Biggin Hill Air Show and it's one of my first memories of aviation. I was 6 and all I wanted to do was become a pilot. But I have to wait. Jump to 2007. I'm working a decent job and I have some spare time, so I decide to start learning to fly. 2 years later, I pass my check ride. I'm an official private pilot. I start growing my flying experience. I add an aerobatic rating. I try for my tailwheel endorsement. I never finish it. I still can't fly a tailwheel to this day. I keep flying for another 4 years. 9 years after my first flight, I pass my commercial pilot's license test. Another year passes, I do my Cirrus transition. I pass my instrument flying test. And then another 2 years pass before the day that kid in the field in Biggin Hill would never have believed was possible. I actually buy my own aircraft. For the next few years, I'm obsessed with flying. I start flying wherever I can, whenever I can, around Australia, over to East Timor, the Bahamas, Iceland, Greenland, around Europe, until brain tumour, brain surgery, and now I'm grounded. But that surgery was a little while ago now, and I'm doing pretty well, I'll be honest with you. I've recovered pretty well over the last 6-7 months. I'm getting my strength back. I ran the New York Marathon last week. To be honest, I feel normal again. I feel like my pre-brain surgery self, if not a lot better, because I now have one less brain tumour in my head. So I feel strong, I can drive again, I can do all the things I could do before, except for one thing. I still can't fly. And one of the reasons why that is actually to do with the aircraft itself. So this is the maintenance release for Echo Yankee Zulu, and here in Australia at least, you cannot legally fly an aircraft if it's been more than a year or more than 100 hours since it did its last annual inspection. Now, Echo Yankee Zulu's annual inspection expired on the 1st of September, so 2 months ago as I record this, and I haven't bothered to renew it. I haven't given the aircraft back to Blue Demon to do the annual inspection so that they can then sign it off for another year. And the reason for that is that whilst Echo Yankee Zulu, I have hired it out in the past to people, and that can generate a bit of income for me, the cost of the annual inspection compared to the income that I can make, it doesn't offset itself. And the main reason for having this aircraft, it's a very privileged thing to say, but the main reason was for me personally to be able to have a vehicle that I could personally fly in, and that I could create content to share with you here on YouTube as well. And because I can't fly, therefore I can't make that kind of content, I am in the position at the moment where I am really wondering whether it's financially viable for me to get this aircraft airworthy again, only to have it sitting in the corner of the hangar gathering dust. Then the other reason why I can't fly, this is probably the biggest reason of all, and that's because of what we call in the aviation world is my medical. You basically have to be at a certain level of medical fitness before you can use your pilot's license to fly. Makes sense, right? And even though I feel perfectly fine, I'm driving, I'm running, I still don't legally have that medical back in order to allow me to fly an aircraft, at least solo as pilot in command right now. Now the regulators around the world, those are the people that kind of look after the rules and regulations around aviation. There are different regulators in different countries. In Australia we have CASA, in America they have the FAA, there's different ones around the world, and the rules according to when you can go back to flying after going through certain medical procedures also varies depending on which regulator you fly under. Now here in Australia with CASA, there isn't actually any defined minimum time between the procedure that I had and when I can go back to fly as pilot in command. It's all done on a case-by-case basis, which I actually think is really good. But because there's no precedent set here in terms of the timings itself, what myself and my DAME, my designated aviation medical examiner, my neurologist, all of us, we've decided to do is to follow the same guidelines that they have in America under the FAA and wait for a minimum of 1 year before I apply to get my medical back. And so for me, that means nothing in Echo Yankee Zulu or nothing as pilot in command until at least March 2025. So jump forward then to March 2025, CASA say, yes, I've got my medical back and I can legally fly Echo Yankee Zulu again. Well, what then? My problem is I can't then just jump straight back into the aircraft and expect to be able to fly at the same skill level of when I was flying, as it will be, a year and a half before that. Flying is a very perishable skill, and I absolutely do not want to put myself in the position when I'm up there, even though I'm legal to fly again, but not with the same skill level that I had before. And this is where the doubts start to creep in, and your confidence as a human being, well, for me at least, is quite low. I'm starting to doubt my abilities. I'm starting to worry that when I get back to the point where I can potentially legally fly again, am I going to be any good at it again? Am I going to have forgotten so much of it because there's been such a gap? Is this honestly a sign? Is this something telling me that perhaps my days of flying are over and maybe I should just give up this thing for good? The year after I passed my private pilot's license test, finances started to get a little bit tight, and in the entire year I flew 0.7 hours. But those 0.7 hours actually taught me something really important, and that was that because I hadn't flown for so long until that flight, I was feeling really behind the aircraft. I knew there were so many different things that I needed to do, but I just couldn't get on top of them, and I felt really overwhelmed. And I said to my instructor at that point, I feel like I'm rushing. And he said to me, the one thing that you should never do in the cockpit of an aircraft is rush. And that's something that's helped me with my flying since that flight, but it's also something that I need to remember now. Because yes, I have a long list of things that I need to do between now and getting myself to the point of flying. But instead of rushing, I think what I actually need to do is to slow down.
When big ambitions get on top of you, when your goal feels out of reach, if you're lacking motivation, then do what I'm trying to do now. Just stop, hit rewind, and go back to the beginning of your timeline and remember your why. The most powerful motivator is to remember why you chose this path in the first place. Forget the many, many reasons that might make you want to stop, and remember the one single reason why you wanted to start. I don't know where this aviation journey will go for me, but the very least I can do right now is not to give up and just keep trying, remembering why I started down this path in the first place. I think it's the very least I can do for that little 6-year-old boy staring at those planes in wonder in that field in Biggin Hill.